Good morning, everyone. Today's Tuesday, also known as She Raises Studios Light the Torch Day. It's always an exciting time because we bring you the most amazing men and women authors who have poured their love, talent, creativity, their personal stories, personal comebacks, perseverance, everything. And I am joined today with another phenomenal woman, Paula Roscoe. She's known as the Grief Guru, and she has written an extraordinary book based off of her own personal story called Survive Grief and Come Back to Life. And so I want to say huge congratulations to you first and foremost. Becoming a author is a huge step. Sharing your story, transparency. So congratulations to you. And are you ready to light the torch?
I certainly am. Thank you so much for having me, Hannah. Lovely.
So we were kind of chit-chatting behind the scenes a few minutes ago, and you were sharing that you have already started the party. So so how does it feel to have your story out there, and tell me some of the feelings you have going on right now?
Oh, yeah, bless you. Yeah, so I'm full of cake. That's the first. It's I think the strongest emotion I'm feeling is joy. It's been a very interesting journey from when I said yes, I do this, from last November. It's been an awakening for me in a lot of ways, of looking back at past events, past traumas, and all the things that I've survived, and to look at it in fresh eyes, with fresh eyes, and sort of look at it with a fresh heart and soul, and look at it with a new perspective. And sort of, there were some things that, that still caused a little bit of tears and a little bit of, okay, so we'll work with that. So it's a very good therapy journey for me as well. But the main thing that I'm feeling is so much joy and gratitude right now. The people who are supporting me are just such beautiful, beautiful, beautiful souls, that because everyone deals with grief at some point. That's the sad part of life. Everyone is going to deal with grief, or they know somebody who is struggling with grief. So it's a topic that people don't really like to talk about. It creates an uncomfortable kind of energy, but it's one that we have to talk about. So for me to be able to finally get this book out and to show people that you can come back from grief, it is doable. It's not particularly easy all the time, but it is doable with the right heart and soul, with the right mind frame, with the right tools that I share a little bit in the book. Then you can have a life. You can come back to life if you choose. It's just, people always assume that when you grieve, that's it. Your life is forever going to be awful, and it will be for a while. But if you become proactive and you become the author of your own future, you're giving yourself permission to have a future.
I think you have provoked me to ask two questions. So grief is a very, very strong, profound word. And there's different types of grief. There's grief of a loss of a loved one. But there's so many different types of grief. What would you say to the man or woman watching today on one of the very first steps you took in being proactive, like what you just said?
It's about sitting with it. I think that's the first thing. So yes, I'm glad you brought up the fact that there are different types of grief. People always assume it's about death. It's not. It can be divorce. It can be separation. It can be moving home. It can be losing that piece of jewelry that has so much memory that you're never going to have that again. You haven't got that piece. It can be absolutely anything that you're losing, that you've lost. And it's about sitting with it and owning that emotion, because so many people in society, they are terrified of feeling the emotion. It's like society says, no, you're not allowed to feel that. Or we'll let you feel it for a little bit, but not too long. Now, don't be human, but it's like, do you know what? I'm giving myself permission to feel it and to own it. And once you start doing that, you can see where your path leads. You can see what steps that you may need to take to come back to life. But until you sit with it and own it, you kind of just tumbleweeding through life, and it's always there in the background. It's always going to be somewhere in your consciousness, and it'll come out in the ways that you behave, the way you think, the way you feel. It dictates. So the people that I work with, the clients that I work with, when we're dealing with their grief now, we don't look at that. I'm looking at the grief that they never dealt with in the past first, because that dictates how you think, feel, and behave now. So you heal that first, then you heal this.
So do you believe that, and then we're going to dive into more about your book, but you are called the grief guru for a reason. And
Yes.
this is a question that I've always wanted to ask you. Is part of grief, I think there's an element of forgiveness that comes along with grief. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. First and foremost, you have to forgive yourself. And realize that you are just as important as the person who died. That's got to be number one. And that can take somebody a long time to get to that point. 2, forgiving the person who died. That's another really big hurdle to get over. And once you allow forgiveness into your heart, which I'll put hands up, it's not an easy thing to do, and some people need help to get there. You have to try and find that forgiveness, because it's you that it's hurting. It's not hurting anybody else, unless it's then you're acting out because you're projecting that lack of forgiveness out onto your loved ones, and the amount of marriages that break down, the amount of friendships that break up because people can't understand the energies that are going on. It's all chaos in there. When you start to allow forgiveness into your heart, you're allowing peace into your heart. That then starts to project outwards. But you need someone like me who has 20 plus years of experience of dealing with grief and death, which is why I use the word guru, because it's just another word for teacher, but it didn't trip off the tongue as well as guru. Who has been, I used to teach people how to be grief therapists. So I've got all that experience of how I can help you find that peace. Because it's important to find that peace, because you deserve that peace. And again, we come back to, once you realize you're just as important as the person who died, then you will actively try and find that peace, because you're worth it. Your life is worth it. Your future is worth it.
Yes.
I
wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. I think that grief is very powerful, and it can take over if you allow it. There's so many different forms of it, but I do believe that peace that you're talking about, I believe it exists, but I do believe it also comes from a place of forgiveness towards yourself, forgiveness towards someone else. And you're right. We sometimes get so mismanaged by emotion, and it does wreak havoc. And if we're not addressing it, if we're not really unpacking it, it fuels you sometimes in the wrong way. So, my question about the book, and for those who are just joining, is you wrote this book from a very personal journey and perspective on grief.
Yes.
And your journey of how you shared the loss of your son. You turned that loss into what you're doing now. How has that been? I mean, I can't even imagine writing the book and doing it how you had. So I'm just curious to know, how are you? How is this? How has this helped you as the author?
Well, as I said at the beginning, it was a hell of a journey to go back and look at these wounds. Have they healed? Do they still need a bit of work? And as a therapist, you're doing that all the time anyway. You're always sort of checking in. Jack's death was the catalyst that sort of set me into writing. I mean, I don't know if you know, but I am already an international award-winning author of fiction. I wrote historical and supernatural novels for years. And it was actually Jack's death 2 weeks after he died that I sat there in the kitchen doodling, and that slowly became a book. And that was my first book that won awards, called Echoes. And it was the writing that saved me. And I realized it was the power of words and how you speak to yourself, how you think about yourself, how you feel. So, I realized that I was saying things like, I will never heal from this. This is going to ruin I honestly believed that my life had finished. Jack's death was finished. That was it. I was done. I was never going to have a life. I was never going to heal. And then I realized as I was writing my book that the words have power. So I started to change the way I started to think about myself. Okay, I might be feeling really bad now, but how about I give myself a bit of a break, And I started to just notice the difference in the way I felt, the way I thought, the way I behaved. So from that, I realized that there was no, I wasn't offered any help or assistance or anything, nothing. So I went and qualified as a therapist, and grief became my speciality so that I could teach women how to heal from such an awful death, and some of the women that I've helped, mothers that I've helped over the years, their children have died in a variety of circumstances. And they all say more or less the same thing, that sentence, I will never heal from this. Grief is, I will never get over this, or variations of. But when we started changing the way they spoke, the words that they wrote, because I use a lot of writing therapy in my programs, they started to shift, and they were seeing that shift. And it was, okay, so this works, this actually works, so let's do some more. So I created over the years various programs using the power of words, because it's important, very important. And that's what Jack's death taught me, definitely.
So for those who are just turning in, I am here today with Paula J. Roscoe. She is the author and creator of Survive Grief and Come Back to Life. And this book has some very deep meaning to it. It's a very personal perspective on her life and what she's sharing. It is currently available all across Amazon and is circulating into the retailers as we speak. But if you are quick, fast, and in a hurry to get this book, you can order it today. For those of you who are Amazon Prime members, you know the drill. And this is definitely a book that I encourage anyone to read, because as we've been talking today, there are several different types of grief. We've talked about peace. We've talked about forgiveness, transformation of emotion even. So my next question to you is, being as vested as you have been in your own healing journey, which you just shared, that you really wanted to be a therapist and help others in this.
Yeah.
How do you guide individuals to navigate grief in a way that honors their unique perspective?
Okay. Well, that's kind of a difficult one, because every person is unique. So until I actually meet that person and get to know them and find out what's actually happening for them. But the main things that I look at are the way that they think, the way that they feel, the way that they are behaving, and where that came from, where that started. Because, like I said before, is that the way that you are grieving now, what you believe and how you think and feel is dictated by your past. All that learned behavior, all those limiting beliefs, all those things like boys don't cry, you have to be the man of the house, stuff like that. So I'll tell you a story. There was a guy who came to me and he had held his grief for 52 years. 52 years. This man had not married. He'd not had any children. He hadn't had a life. He'd gone to a job that he hated and he'd just come home and just do it, whatever he did. He was in his early 60s when he came to me. And it had all started when he was 9 years old and his mother had died. And the first thing his father said, don't cry. So he never did. He never cried. So when he came to me, he was 61, 62, and he just cried. I gave him that space. And as he walked out the door, I said, I'm not going to see you again, am I? He goes, nope, that's all I needed. That's great. That's fabulous, So each person is absolutely individual. It's about giving them what they need, but also knowing that with my experience and stuff that I can challenge them that little bit so that they shift. So I use a lot of writing exercises that are guided. I do work with angels as well. I'm a spiritual medium, so I guide them in. And these are little writing exercises that will make them go, oh, I didn't know I thought that. I didn't know I felt that. So then we can work on that. We can look at why you're thinking that. Why are you feeling that? Where did that come from? Well, let's heal that. Right, let's move on to the next one. Stuff like that. So this is how I work. And then I created a 5-month program that has specifics in place, but it can be altered. And so it's unique for every single client that I have. And it involves lots of modalities, but it is mainly around writing therapy, meditations, and angel guidance.
Yeah. You wrote about that. You talk about the angels, spirits, and you've mentioned this throughout the healing process through the book. It's something you've integrated. How would you say integrating the spirituality aspect can help someone overcome the grief? Like you just shared, you have this man who held on to grief and that's a very long time, by the way, to hold on to something. And another thing that I know about grief is it can cause anger. It's almost suffocating if you allow it to be. So spirituality is a very intimate journey in itself. So how have you seen that spirituality that you're talking about help these individuals who are dealing with grief?
Okay, so when I talk about angels and spirit guides and I use their channeling and I use their messages, the people that I'm working with, they're not necessarily Christian or anything. Some have no beliefs. I personally am not a Christian or anything like that. I didn't work with angels for a very long time because of that. I always assumed it was sort of a religious thing. Eventually the angel said, no, we're not religious. It's about love. It's about guidance. It's about support. It's about kindness and compassion and holding that space, that energy for you. And when I work that through with my clients, they can feel that. Even the other side of the world, they can feel that energy. They can feel that support. They can feel that they're not alone. because that's one of the main things that I come across. People feel so isolated. They feel
Yeah.
so alone, even in a room full of people, because they can't communicate what they're thinking, feeling, or doing. And if everyone is, if everyone's grieving, then no one can look after anybody else, because you're all coming at it from different energies.
Mm-hmm.
And it can cause a blockage. And so that causes loneliness. It causes isolation. So when I talk about angels with my clients and they hear the messages that come from them, it reinforces, oh, I'm not alone. I do feel that. I can feel that love. I can feel that support. I mean, some of the messages that come through, I couldn't possibly know them, but the angels do.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, oh, how did they know that? Oh, I was doing that yesterday. And oh, they watched me do that. I was doing that. And I asked that, so it reinforces. That's what it's about. It's just bringing in, while you're healing, you're not alone. You have Paula and you have us.
Right.
So it's not about religion at all. Not at all. And in some cases, the loved one who died will come in. But I don't offer that as such, but that has happened. And that's always a nice indication for the person, who's grieving, that, oh yeah, they are okay. That, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's all about love. That's the main thing that I work with. It's about love. Love is the strongest energy there is. And when you're grieving, you can forget that the grief is about love, and you hurt because you loved. So let's heal that so that you can get back to that love. See, the thing that I come across all the time is when you're grieving, you're coming at it from a very dark place. You're coming at it, I used to call it the pit of despair. And when you're in that dark space, you're missing that person, you love that person, you're yearning for that person, of course you are, or for whatever situation it is that you're grieving for. When you start to heal and you allow more love to come in and you heal that hurt, you change your vibration, so you're coming at it from here instead of here. And it's a different connection, and it's really hard to, because I can't show you, I can't on this, but when I watch people go from this dark place of grief and they release it to come from a pure place of love and forgiveness and joy that they had that person, that gift in their life, it's a completely different energy. And it doesn't mean that you take away or you forget about that person, or suddenly, you stop crying, or you have your moments. Of course you do. You're never going to forget that person, but instead of being overwhelmed in the dark place, you can I like to put it as, you can put grief into your pocket and you can pull it out when you want to, and then you can put it back in when you want to. But you've come back to life. You are accepting life again, because you're just as important as the person who died. That is always my message. Always.
Such a profound. I can't even put into words. I think I'm tongue-tied. I want to say, number one, thank you for sharing today with me, and just being so authentic and transparent. And I am curious to know, we've talked about the different forms of grief, and I know specifically you're targeting certain aspects in your book. Do you have another book in you that talks about other types of griefs that people experience? Do you think that's something in your horizon forecast?
Yes, possibly. It's something that while I was writing this book, I was thinking, oh, I wonder if I could talk about the stress and the anxiety that comes from that, or if I could look at ways to heal with that, because my book is in 3 parts. It's got a self-help section and the information section. And while I was writing my memoir, I can remember what did I do for that anxiety? How did I heal that? And I was starting to think, maybe I could do a book on anxiety and stress and stuff like that. But more about, as you said, other types of grief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, there are so many forms. Loss of a loved one, of course, is there's no words. Like you said, it's hard to put it into words. But I think the deep connection that you've provided in this book, I think, is really going to help so many out there. And I really do encourage anyone who's watching, listening to this Light the Torch today. Her book is available now. How can people connect with you moving forward? Where's the best place to send them? Obviously, we want them to get the book, but this is something that you do. This is your business. How do people connect with you directly?
Well, I have a Facebook page. It's called For Women Who Want to Heal Their Grief. And they can find me as Paula J. Roscoe, Grief Guru. And I also have a website that people can contact me through. And that's www.pjroscoe.co.uk. And when you go on it, you can either go and look at my fictional books, or you can look at my grief page and stuff like that. And there's also a free gift on there for you, a free healing gift, just for having a look, because I like to give gifts. I like to give a little, spread the love. That's what I say, so they're the two main places that you can find me. And I've also got a YouTube channel with lots of little tiny little videos on. I think there's over 60 there now, just short videos on little grief topics, because sometimes, when we're grieving, your attention span, if you can't watch an hour long, you can't watch, but maybe a little snippet of something might just be able to help you. Little writing exercise. Oh, I'll try this. That just might elevate your energy just that little bit, just to get out of bed even, because grief can affect you, mind, body, and spirit. And one of the main things that I focus on is healing your mind, body, and spirit, because all three are affected by grief.
I wholeheartedly agree. I don't think it was any coincidence that you and I sat here today. And I shared this with you. It's been a while since I've held the Light the Torches for She Rises Studios, just mainly because I'm always behind the scenes working on the things that put you where, in the author seat.
Yeah.
But I think there's no coincidence today that you and I sat here today and had such a beautiful discussion. So I want to thank you for that, because you're right. Love is the most powerful and beautiful gift. And no matter what you are grieving about, you can heal, and it is through love. You're right. And so thank you for sharing that. So Survive Grief and Come Back to Life by Paula Roscoe. I highly, highly recommend this book to anyone. This isn't just a book for one form of grief or one incident. This is a book for everyone. It is available all across Amazon. I think we're in 13 countries right now. You can order it online. And I wish you the absolute best with this book and all your endeavors. You heard how you can connect with her. And I really hope everyone grabs this book. And congratulations to you.
Thank you so much, so much. It's been an absolute joy, a pleasure. Because that's what life's supposed to be, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. I think you put some things into perspective even for me today. And so I am leaving here full of love, and it was really an honor to talk to you today. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. It was an honor. Thank you so much. And many blessings to you and to everyone who's watching.
Yes, everyone get this book. Get your hands on this book today. And let's elevate her to bestseller, international bestseller again, because as you mentioned, you have already done that. But this is a book for, like you said, healing the body, mind, and spirit. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Paula.
You're welcome. Thank you.